Good afternoon, everyone. It's time to start this ECON meeting. And let's start with the adoption of the agenda. If there is no remark, then the agenda is adopted. And we move to Chair's announcement. I have several announcements to make. First, interpretation is available today in 13 languages. Then, a brief summary of decision and recommendation, coordinators meeting of September 19 of the year 2024. Unfinished business in relation to the opinion on insolvency proceeding. It was agreed to request to the CCC-COP that the application of Rule 55 be grandfathered. It was also agreed that ECON should maintain its opinion issued in 2023. Nomination. It was agreed to continue with the past practice, meaning to start with an initial distribution of 300 points. A legislative report will now cost 3 points, and a consultation 2 points, and an opinion 1 point. Procedures in the name of the chair or one of the vice chair cost 0 point. Nomination decision will be taken in accordance with Rule 220, paragraph 2. Files for nomination. INIs were attributed to the following groups: European Semester for Economic Policy Coordination 2025, EPP, European Central Bank Annual Report 2024, Renew, Competition Policy Annual Report 2024, S&D, Banking Union Annual Report 2024, EPP, Financial Activities of the European Investment Bank, Annual Report 2024, S&D. Legislative opinion, decision on a possible nomination regarding the agreement establishing an association between the European Union and the Principality of Andorra and the Republic of San Marino, respectively, was postponed until the official referral has been made. Coordinator decided not to provide opinions on the discharge file. Also, for your information, the revised draft calendar of ECON meetings in 2025 was approved. Regarding economic governance, now, coordinator agreed that the Eurogroup president should be invited for an economic dialogue in autumn. Coordinators also agreed to invite all of the member states subject to a council decision establishing the existence of an excessive deficit. A decision on the precise schedule will be taken later. Coordinator agreed to invite the commissioner in charge of technical support instrument for an exchange of view during a joint budget ECON meeting in October-November 2024. Coordinator also agreed to invite the chair of the Invest EU Steering Board, Elena Flores, to a budget ECON meeting after the hearings of the commissioner designate, and to organize an in-camera meeting with the EP representative in the Invest EU Steering Board, Alain Lamassoure, in preparation of the public exchange with Elena Flores. Regarding working groups, coordinators agreed to keep the Banking Union Working Group and the Competition Working Group, to merge the SME Working Group with FinTech Working Group, to rebrand the Financial Assistance Working Group into an ECON Working Group on the scrutiny and enforcement of the economic governance framework. For your information, speaking arrangement for hearings and exchange of view in ECON, it was agreed to keep the previous practice, which means first round, 1 slot for Q&A for each political group, second and subsequent round, don't system, then catch the eyes. On any other business, coordinators agreed to organize a joint exchange of view with Mario Draghi, Enrico Letta, and Christian Noyer on their respective reports on CMU. Now we can move to point 3. Yes, Ms. Gurry, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one remark, because from your presentation, it seems as if we had consensus among coordinators, and I just would like to make it very clear that I was not agreeing to the distribution of files, because the third largest group, Patriots, was excluded from getting any file. And I think it goes against the DONT system, it goes against the basic rules of democracy. So I just want this to be part of the records of this meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we take note. Now we move to point 3, and I will switch to French. Je suis ravie d'accueillir aujourd'hui pour ce dialogue monétaire Madame Christine Lagarde, la présidente de la Banque Centrale Européenne. C'est la première fois sous cette législature que Madame Christine Lagarde vient devant ce comité. Nous avons un dialogue très constructif et régulier avec la Banque Centrale Européenne. Je suis absolument sûre que cela va continuer, mais je tenais à le souligner, notamment pour les nouveaux membres. Ce dialogue, il est essentiel, même si la Banque Centrale Européenne est évidemment indépendante, mais elle a une responsabilité vis-à-vis du Parlement européen. Le Parlement européen tient d'ailleurs à cette responsabilité. La Banque Centrale Européenne, durant le dernier mandat, s'est retrouvée en première ligne pour faire face à la crise du Covid, pour faire face aux conséquences ensuite de la guerre en Ukraine et de la poussée inflationniste. C'est une institution sur laquelle on peut toujours compter au niveau européen. Et c'est pour ça que ce dialogue est essentiel. Aujourd'hui, nous avons assisté ces dernières années à une augmentation des taux d'intérêt pour faire face à la crise inflationniste. Là, on voit qu'il y a une évolution de la politique monétaire. C'est ce dont on va parler aujourd'hui avec Christine Lagarde. Et puis, il y a la question de l'union des marchés de capitaux, dont on a parlé régulièrement au sein de cette commission, dont le rapport Draghi, lui aussi, a mentionné ces dernières semaines. Et puis, ça a toujours été un point important pour la Banque Centrale Européenne. D'où l'audition d'aujourd'hui, et je vais repasser à l'anglais. In this context, 2 topics were chosen by the Econ Committee coordinators for today's meetings: the assessment of the ECB's monetary policy stance, the relevance of the capital market unions for monetary policy. As usual, all briefing papers prepared by the European Parliament panel of experts are available on the Econ Committee website. But before we start, let me inform you about a few practical considerations. The following procedure will be applied. We will start with a first statement by President Christine Lagarde for about 10 minutes. And then we will open the floor to a Q&A session. A first round of questions, one slot per political group, with a possibility for a follow-up question, and a second round of questions where the DONT system is applied. I will ask you to respect the time given to you. And now I give the floor to Madame Lagarde.
Madame la Présidente, merci beaucoup. Merci de vos mots d'introduction. And I will go straight into English so that it's easy for those who do not necessarily master our beautiful language and master other beautiful language. So, Madam Chair, members of the European Parliament, it's a real great pleasure to return to this committee for the first time since the European elections. I very much look forward to exchanges with you all, and whether you are new, not so new members, over the course of the parliamentary term, it will be a pleasure to come and first of all present and then certainly take the questions that you have. But let me first congratulate all of you for your re-election or your election, because clearly you will be playing a significant role at a time when Europe faces major challenges. And critical decisions will need to be made, will need to be taken over the next 5 years, and the work that you do in this particular committee is critically important. As member of the European Parliament in general, you play an essential role in channeling citizens' questions and concerns about all policies, but also about European Central Bank policies. And I am committed, together with my team members, to maintaining the dialogue that I have always had with your Econ Committee, as those members who have been around in the previous term will remember. I'm committed to building a positive and constructive relationship with you, Madam President, but with all of you as representative of the European people. I think that by working together, we can fulfill our joint accountability, liability and obligations under the treaty and build better trust in our institutions and certainly better trust in the European Central Bank. So in my remarks today, I will start by providing an update on the euro area economic outlook as we see it, and then I will say a few words about the ECB monetary stance, and I will conclude, as you can imagine, by a few remarks about the Capital Market Union, which I have already committed a few speeches or remarks to, because I believe that it's important also from the ECB point of view. So, turning first of all to the economic activity, it has recovered slowly since the end of the pandemic. The post-pandemic reopening allowed the euro area economy to grow during the first 9 months of 2022. But economic activity broadly stagnated thereafter. And this was due, among other factors, to the energy price shock following Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the increased geocapital uncertainty, but also attributable to the tightening of our monetary policy. More on that later. Growth resumed in early 2024. The euro area economy grew by 0.2% in the second quarter after a 0.3% in the first quarter. However, growth in the second quarter stemmed mainly from exports and government consumption. On the other hand, domestic demand remained weak as households consumed less, firms cut business investment, and housing investment dropped. The services sector is holding up with signs of deceleration, while activity in the manufacturing and construction sectors remain subdued. Looking ahead, the suppressed level of some survey indicators suggests that the recovery is facing headwinds. We expect the recovery to strengthen over time as rising real incomes should allow households to consume more. The latest ECB staff projections foresee the economy growing by 0.8% in 24, 1.3% in 25, and 1.5% in 26. You should have, and I'm sure it has been circulated to you, a little chart that looks like that, which gives you a number of graphs or reference points that can be helpful as I go through the economic outlook description. And you can see the growth progression that we expect in the upper and left corner. The labor market, and you see that in the unemployment chart and the unemployment rate. So the labor market remains resilient, with unemployment rate standing at 6.4% in July, latest reading we have, broadly unchanged from past year. Little lower, but it's a matter of decimal, really. At the same time, employment growth slowed to just 0.2% in second quarter, but still growth. Recent indicators point to a further deceleration in the coming quarters. According to our staff, the unemployment rate is projected to remain around its current low level, and you have that in the unemployment rate charts in the right-hand side of the term sheet that you have. Turning now to price developments, disinflation has been accelerating over the last 2 months. Headline inflation fell to 2.2% in August 24 and is expected to drop further in September, mainly on account of falling energy costs. We have seen already some numbers coming down for France, for Spain, for Italy, and more recently for Germany today. And that confirms this point. Core inflation, taking energy and food out, edged down to 2.8% in August, driven by a decline in goods inflation that outweighed an increase in services inflation. The indicator of domestic inflation, which only includes items with a low import intensity, remained high in August as wages continued to grow at an elevated pace. At the same time, the overall growth in labor costs has been moderating in recent quarters, and profits have been buffering the impact of higher wages on inflation. Looking ahead, inflation might temporarily increase in the fourth quarter of this year as previous sharp falls in energy prices drop out of the annual rates. But the latest developments strengthen our confidence that inflation will return to target in a timely manner. We will take that into account in our next monetary policy meeting in October. And again, you have indication about inflation development in the left bottom corner of the term sheet that you have. The ECB staff projections from September foresee inflation to average at 2.5% in 24, 2.2% in 25, and 1.9% in 26. So let me now turn to our monetary policy stance, which is the first topic that you've chosen for today's hearing. I would contend that we have come a long way in the fight against inflation. Remember, in October 22, inflation was at 10.6%. 1 year later, by September 23, the last time we raised interest rates, it had dropped by more than half, down to 5.3%, 5.2%. The decline in inflation and the anchoring of long-term inflation expectations showed that our strong monetary policy response was bearing fruit. Then, after 9 months of holding rates steady, we saw inflation halve again. So 10.6, 5.2, we were down in June at 2.6 when we started lowering interest rates, as you indicated, Madam President. The new data available at the time of the September Governing Council meeting reinforced our confidence in the timely return of inflation to our 2% target. We therefore lowered the rate on the deposit facility, which is the rate through which we steer the monetary policy stance, and we lowered it by another 25 basis points. We are now down to 3.5% for the DFR. We are determined that inflation will return to our 2% medium-term target in a timely manner. We will continue to follow a data-dependent approach in determining the appropriate level and duration of restriction, focusing on the inflation outlook, the dynamics of underlying inflation, and the strength of monetary policy transmission. Policy rates will be kept sufficiently restrictive for as long as necessary to achieve our aim, and we are not pre-committing to any particular rate path. Moreover, as we announced on March 13, 2024, some changes to the operational framework for implementing monetary policy took effect as of September the 18th. In particular, the spread between the interest rate on the main refinancing operations and the deposit facility rate was set at 15 basis points instead of 50 basis points. The aim of this measure is to steer short-term money market rates more closely in line with monetary policy decisions. In parallel to our policy deliberations, we have also launched an assessment of our monetary policy strategy. This assessment will be more limited in scope than our last review, which we completed in July 21, and will include 2 work streams. One work stream will focus on the changed inflation environment and the other on the implications for our monetary policy strategy, including what we can learn from the periods of both low and high inflation. We expect to conclude that assessment in the second half of 25, and before that, I will regularly keep you updated on the progress of our analysis and our consideration. So let me now turn to the second topic of this hearing, the Capital Market Union. The ECB has long emphasized the need for progress in this area to integrate our fragmented markets and thus foster risk diversification and shock absorption across the European Union. Doing so would support financial stability and facilitate the transmission of monetary policy. But a deep and integrated single market for capital is also essential for achieving some of the EU's other key goals, from financing the green and digital transitions to enabling savers to earn higher returns. Additionally, young and innovative firms need to grow and become more productive, which will ultimately benefit all Europeans. But for the time being, a lack of access to equity financing is a key factor holding these firms back or letting them go across the Atlantic. Advancing the capital market union must therefore be a cornerstone of the EU's competitiveness strategy. Significant efforts have been made over the past decade to move forwards, and I want to pay tribute to the role that the European Parliament has played in promoting an ambitious European approach. But vested interests and competing national priorities and protection of territories have hampered that process. Now, at the beginning of a new legislative term, we are at a crossroads. The current political momentum needs to be converted into concrete agenda with clear priorities. And this agenda must be swiftly followed up with genuine action. The ECB Governing Council laid out its priorities for European capital market in a statement that we issued back in March. Let me highlight briefly 3 key areas where progress, in our view, the view of the Governing Council, comprising all governors of the national central banks of the euro area, are. First, we must improve the way we save in Europe. In 2022, household European savings exceeded 1.1 trillion euros. However, around a third of these savings are held in deposits, significantly more than in the United States. You have that comparative as well on the back page of this term sheet. Mobilizing even a small portion of these funds and investing them in European capital markets could greatly contribute to the more than 700 billion needed annually to achieve the EU key strategic objectives. This is also likely to provide better long-term returns to our citizens while improving European companies' access to equity finance. Second, and yes, it is controversial, we need a single regulatory and supervisory ecosystem that promotes market integration. And third, for EU capital markets to be more attractive to investors and issuers, they need to achieve greater scale and depth. This can only happen through integration, especially in our trading and post-trading infrastructure. So the world is changing. Europe is at risk of falling behind. You've heard that already from my illustrious predecessor, I'm sure. The diagnosis and the remedy are clear. The EU must come together and address its structural challenges to increase its competitiveness. Advancing the capital market union is an important part of this agenda, but not the only one. Significant efforts to boost Europe's economic resilience and decarbonize the economy will also be needed. This will require substantial investment in the coming years, which needs to come from both private and public sources. Progress in these areas will not only enhance Europe's ability to withstand future economic shocks, but also help the ECB to maintain price stability. I'd like to quote former President Jacques Chirac on this particular moment. He once observed, "The construction of Europe is an art. It is the art of the possible." The Parliament has found ways to push Europe forwards before, and I trust you will do so again. Future of Europe is in your hands. So I want to thank you for your attention. I look forward to your questions. When I have the answer, when I know the answer, I promise I will give it to you. If I don't, I will admit that I don't, and I will come back to you when I've done my little research. Thank you.